Hello, I love your channel. Some of my favorite videos are the true paranormal stories. Me and my family had some strange things happen in the house we used to live in, so I thought you might be able to use my story. Here it is. When I was 7, me and my family moved from a 2-family house in Frenchtown, New Jersey, to a beautiful 1800s farmhouse. It was my parents, baby brother, me, our 2 dogs, and 1 cat. Our house was at the end of the road. There were a couple more houses on it, and our landlady also lived on this road. The property was 10 acres and was surrounded by woods. I loved to ride my bike and run around the huge yard, but not long after moving in, things started getting weird. On the 2nd floor, there were the bedrooms and a full bathroom. One of the first strange things I remember was waking up in the early morning, sweating. I went to kick off my blankets to cool off, but they were tucked in around me, so I had to really pull to get them off. When I got up after a couple hours, I told my mom to please not tuck my blankets in like that. She said she didn't, and neither did my dad. This kept happening a few nights a week. Then one night I woke up again from being too hot and began kicking at the blankets and pulling them out from under the mattress. When I opened my eyes, I could see an old lady leaning over me. She looked nice, and for some reason I wasn't scared. I told my mom. She said I was probably dreaming. Some nights I would go and sleep in my parents' room. I was getting annoyed with the lady that kept tucking in my blankets. Then my parents started sleeping on the sofa downstairs in the living room. They told me to sleep in my own room. I guess they weren't concerned about the ghost lady. I thought that was strange they were sleeping downstairs, because their bed upstairs was much more comfortable than the old pull-out couch. So since they were downstairs, I would sometimes go sleep in their bed, even though they didn't want me in there. I did this so the lady wouldn't bother me. They didn't know I was sleeping in there. They thought I was still in my room. Sometimes, in their bedroom, I would wake up feeling very sick to my stomach, and would then go join them and sleep downstairs. One morning, I wake up in my parents' bed and roll over to my back and look out the window, like I always did when I woke up. Out of the corner of my eye, I see movement in the left side of the room. I look over and see a black mass growing out of the corner. It looked like a cloud, maybe made of tiny insects. It grew larger and slowly moved along the wall to the window. I was so terrified I couldn't move. I've never felt fear like that before or after this event. When it got to the window, it started to move towards me. Somehow I was able to get up and run. I ran to my mom and told her what happened. She looked very concerned and told me to not sleep in that room and to stay out of it. After that, we all slept together on the couch in the living room. The really strange thing is, for some reason, I really wanted to keep going back in that room, even after seeing that thing and waking up sick. I was scared I would see that thing again, but it wasn't enough to keep me out. I was drawn to it. I would bring my toys in there and sit on the bed and play. One time, I was playing with my cousin, and she was chasing me. I ran into that room. She followed me in and just stopped and looked around. She then said, "Let's just go back downstairs." I thought it was weird. I don't remember anything else scary happening in that room, just how that room had a strange feeling. After a few weeks, my parents made one of the rooms downstairs into a bedroom for me and my brother. Nothing much happened in that room. Another creepy thing I remember happening in that farmhouse. Once, in the living room, one of my brother's toy trains moved across the hutch by itself, stopping right before falling off the edge. I would also see the lady walking up the stairs and hear doors upstairs closing and opening when no one was up there. After we had moved out of that house, and I was older, my mom told me she saw that black thing too, coming out of the corner, just like when I saw it. My dad also eventually admitted to seeing it. He had slept in there alone because my mom refused and slept on the couch. He saw it one night and then started sleeping on the couch as well. She also would see it in the basement. The basement was very old. It had a stone wall, and one part of it you couldn't stand up all the way. You had to duck. There were shelves with old dusty bottles filled with liquid, probably old liquor bottles. My mom said she could feel it before it would appear, and if she didn't get out of there, it would start materializing. It would come out of the small room with the old bottles, so she would do the laundry as quickly as possible. The basement had the same feeling as the bedroom. The feeling is hard to describe. Sort of like a heaviness that makes you almost tired. Another strange thing that would happen while I was sleeping upstairs is I would often have dreams of floating down the stairs and around the house. I told my mom one morning that last night I floated down the stairs into the kitchen and saw her washing dishes. Looking shocked, she said, "Yeah, I was washing dishes." Only I remember having these floating dreams in that house. Maybe that's just something children dream about. I have heard other people say they have those same dreams when they're small. I just find it weird I only had them in that house. My mom also told me later that when she would put away dishes, the next day they would be rearranged. She would keep cups on the bottom shelf so I could get a drink if I needed, but the next day the cups would be back on the top shelf. It kept happening to the point she eventually just left them. She figured it was the lady. She said she would sometimes get glimpses of the old lady walking down the stairs. She said she would also find my baby brother tucked in, like I was. That's why they put us downstairs in the same room. We would only go upstairs to take baths since the downstairs bathroom had only a sink and a toilet. I don't know if it had anything to do with the haunting, but while we lived there, me and my brother were sick a lot. We both needed surgeries. He got tubes in his ears for constant ear infections, and I got my tonsils removed because of constant sore throats. After moving out, we were not sick nearly as much, just normal colds and flus. Right before moving out, my mom told the landlady about the weird things we experienced. She figured the landlady would think she was nuts, but why not? The landlady didn't think my mom was nuts. Instead, she said, "Oh no, I didn't think it would bother you." Turns out her mother had died in that house. Her sons were offered to live there rent-free, but they refused, saying they didn't want their grandma watching them. She didn't know about the black mass we saw, but did say that for a few years there was a caretaker that took care of the house and land while it sat empty. He was a bitter man who was often drunk, so he was asked to leave. After being fired, he kept showing up on the property. He would be found passed out in one of the outbuildings or wandering around the property. Then he stopped showing up. No one knows what happened to him. The bottles in the basement were probably his. My mom thinks he could be the negative energy or the black mass that was in their bedroom and in the basement. When we moved to Pennsylvania, we moved into a newly built house. Nothing strange has happened in that house. Sometimes we drive down that dirt road to look at the old house. Last time we stopped by, there were people living there. I wonder if they've seen anything. I hope you can use this, and thanks again for the videos. Hello, Super Horror Show. I've been waiting to share my story for a while, but I've been worried that whoever I share it with would cut it up, edit it, and make it sound like things didn't happen the way they did. I don't think you would do that. You are welcome to share my name, George, and my story. Late one night in the summer of 2015, I was driving home. I was staying with my parents in Pennsylvania until what would become my last year at college, and I was working part-time at Burger King, so I'd have some money to get around. My parents lived in a very wooded area, and it was generally a safe place to live, but several nearby houses were foreclosures. This was creating trouble in the area. Sometimes strange people would drive up randomly and start looking through the windows. They could have been house hunters, but they also could have been thieves. Some people would run around, break into these houses, and steal the copper plumbing to sell for scrap. So everyone in the neighborhood was on the lookout for strange cars, especially at night. The drive home was 25 minutes, and there was one part of the drive that didn't have any lights on the road at all. if you parked your car and turned off your headlights, you wouldn't be able to see your hand in front of your face. Once I brought some friends over, and they made jokes about how it was the kind of place where Bigfoot would jump out and get you, and no one would believe you. I wasn't worried about Bigfoot though. There were several houses on that road. If Bigfoot is real, he wouldn't want to be that close to people. There were still many accidents on that stretch of road, caused by two things: the sharp twists and turns, and deer. Most of the time it was either a car that veered off the road and hit a big rock, disabling the car, or the car crashing into someone's fence. Anyways, this one night I was driving home, and when I reached this spot, some thick fog rolled in. This was something that happened regularly, because this road would take you up the mountain. But between the darkness, the twists and turns, the fog, and the possible deer, I was driving slowly, like 15 miles per hour slowly. And it's a good thing that I did. After one of the sharp turns, I saw a few deer spread out all over the road. I saw they had a few fawn with them. My dad would always honk the horn when he saw fawn in the road. It sounds mean, but he said he was trying to scare them so they would be careful around roads later. So even as the deer moved, I honked the horn a little bit. They all moved except for one a little further down the road. It's like that deer didn't care. Now you don't want to try to speed past a deer. If you spook it, it might run right into the side of your car. So I play with the high beams, give the horn a honk, but it still doesn't seem to care at all. It just kept its head down, like it was eating something. I was only 11 minutes from my home, so I decided to just slowly move around it. As I started driving forward, the deer looks up and takes notice of me. Finally, I thought. So I waited again for the deer to move. As it started moving forward, I went to change the song on my iPhone. And when I looked up, the deer was still in the road. At first I was thinking, clearly no one honked at this deer when it was small. But when I looked, like really looked at the deer, I noticed its body was wrong. Its body was stretched out, and its head would jerk around, like it had a twitch. It was maybe 50 feet away. I know having a long deer doesn't sound very scary, but if you were there, it's terrifying. The deer was able to, by itself, block the road, and because of how narrow and ridiculous this road is, pulling a U-turn was not an option. I would need to back down the road in reverse until I found a place to pull a U-turn. I started backing up, hazards on, trying to keep my eye on both the thing and what was going on behind me as I backed up. The last I saw it, it was standing on its hind legs. I didn't get home for an hour, and when I finally did reach home, I was still terrified. Something was happening. I started remembering, or maybe realizing all kinds of things that were wrong about that deer. It didn't run off with the other deer. It was long. It had that odd head twitch. And when it stood up, and was looking right at me, its eyes faced forward, not side to side like a regular deer. Even the antlers were wrong. Bucks wouldn't have their antlers in at that time of year. I wouldn't be surprised if several accidents on that road were from this thing, and people just say it was a deer because they don't want to look crazy. After looking it up, I think it was a knot deer, but I couldn't even really tell you. It was 50 feet away, dark and foggy. I read knot deer have something wrong with their legs. I didn't notice it. But it's standing like that, looking at me. I know it wasn't a regular deer. I hope you can use this, and thanks for the great videos. George. That's it for today's accounts. Isn't it strange how in the first story, she was drawn to that scary thing, but in the second story, he didn't even fully identify what was bizarre about the creature and was ready to get out. And then, when he was safe at home, he was able to reflect on what he'd seen. I wonder what causes these variations. Maybe George being in a car when it happened lent itself to George driving away immediately? Could a scary entity being in your home make you less likely to run because it's your home? If this is your first time here and you enjoyed this, subscribe and say hi in the comments. You are important, so make sure you take good care of yourself.